at that time, they still referred to it as test tube babies. So it was before in vitro fertilization and the real test tube babies. But my generation was the first generation that was created by deliberately separating sex and reproduction, and parents at the time were advised to keep it secret. The donors, and of course they weren't really donors; they were selling their semen. Were promised that their identities would never be revealed, and so it was all. And the belief was that if you keep it secret and if you lie about it, everyone will forget and they'll be best that way.
Welcome to OTR, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This is where we talk honestly about what people actually live with: anxiety, depression, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, trauma, and more. No stigma, no sugarcoating, just real conversations about how you think, how you feel, and how you move through the world. If you're looking for clarity, validation, and a place where your story makes sense, you're in the right space. Let's get into it.
Today Bob talks with Mark Michaels, who brings a uniquely multidisciplinary background to his work. He holds a BA with honors from the University of Michigan, a JD from New York University School of Law, and dual MA degrees in American Studies from NYU and Yale. Professionally, he has served as staff attorney and deputy director for the American Indian Law Alliance, working on indigenous rights, environmental policy, and cultural protection. He has published legal scholarship on native sovereignty, immigration rhetoric, and human rights. Michaels is also an award-winning author in the fields of tantra, intimacy, and relationship design, co-writing 5 nationally recognized books and contributing chapters to multiple anthologies. His work earned Independent Publisher Gold, Living Now Gold, International Book Awards, and Forward Indies honors. His career also includes earlier work as a playwright, translator, and literary manager for New York theater companies, with productions and staged readings of his translations and original work. Mark Michaels' resume spans law, science, sexuality education, theater, and documentary film, a rare combination of scholarship, fieldwork, and creative leadership.
Now, here's Bob with today's show.
Hey, we're here with Mark Michaels, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself before we get started. Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm currently a graduate student in creative writing at Wilkes University. I've just returned from my first residency there. I'm 66 years old. I've been a writer in one way or another pretty much all of my life, but I decided that I want to get some more sort of formal training and move in some new directions with my writing. So I'm very excited about that.
Wow.
I grew up in New York City and came of age in the 70s, was very involved in the punk rock scene and in the early years in New York, and that sort of shaped my aesthetics and my artistic sensibilities ever since. I have a law degree, a couple of degrees in American Studies. I've worked in theater. I practiced American Indian law, really under the direction of Native people when I was practicing law. I've been a Tantra teacher and an author, and I'm entering a new chapter at age 66.
Wow. Okay, I'm actually older than you. I'm 68, but you're in my generation, so I know exactly. You can reference anything, I'll know what you're talking about. That goes back.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about. I don't know where to start, but could you just give us a general rundown? When you, first of all, could you tell us about your unusual birth situation? You were, what do you call it? The product of
I should have said that in the intro. I mean, that's a pretty important part of my story, really. I was conceived by what was, well, I guess it's still called artificial insemination by donor. at that time, they still referred to it as also as test tube babies. So
Right.
it was before in vitro fertilization and the real test tube babies. But my generation was the first generation that was created by deliberately separating sex and reproduction,
Hmm.
and and parents at the time were advised to keep it secret. The donors, and of course they weren't really donors; they were selling their semen.
Right.
Were promised that their identities would never be revealed. And so it was all, and the belief was that if you keep it secret and if you lie about it, everyone will forget and they'll be best that way.
Yeah. But you had a feeling when you grew up. What kind of household was it? Was it safe, dysfunctional, or how would you describe your household?
It was complicated, and I'm currently going through a process of reassessing a lot of what I believe to be true about my childhood and the household I grew up in.
Right.
As I've learned that my fundamental attachment pattern is secure, and that my relationship with my parents was kind of good enough. That's not to say I didn't have a lot of childhood trauma, but I think what I've come to realize is that the trauma didn't produce the kind of dissociative patterns that more severe trauma would cause, and that this fundamentally secure attachment is, has really caused me to re-examine a lot of things
But
about my growing up.
would you say that you had a normal childhood, though? I mean, you did all the normal stuff, or you grew up in New York State, right?
Yeah, in Riverdale in the Bronx, which is
Oh, the Bronx.
in New York
Okay.
City.
So,
Uh,
how would you did you play sports or you did
uh,
other things?
I mean, yes, when I was a little kid, I was really into baseball.
Hmm.
I was the kind of kid who I was not. I'm also neurodivergent, and
Right.
my form of neurodivergence is what's popularly called nonverbal learning disability,
Okay.
which really relates more to visual spatial things and fine motor skills. So I wasn't the most coordinated kid in the world, but I was
Hmm.
big for my age. I
Hmm.
was really into sports. I'm also highly gifted, so I kind of had this ability to relate to adults very well as a small child. And my mother would tell the story of me just going as soon as I could, and had a pitch back going out and practicing
Oh,
baseball for
okay.
hours
And
and
now,
hours
of
at a
course,
time.
I'm sorry. You got to forgive me. I have ADHD. It's really bad. And sometimes I just don't know when somebody finishes. But I was just going to say, you had to be a Yankee fan, right?
Mets.
In the Bronx? Okay. Yeah, I'm a big Yankee fan. I watch every game to this day. But I rooted for the Mets in '69. That must have been really a thrill for you that year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Mets were the lovable
Yeah.
losers, and
Right.
I may have been like when I was a really little kid a Yankees fan,
Okay.
but there was so
Fair
much,
enough.
kind of lore around the Mets that how could you not root for them at that time?
Yeah, yeah, it was great. I mean, I was in what, sixth grade maybe. And did you also? Because I loved the space program. Were you into that?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
who wasn't?
I know it was just great.
I mean, the moon.
Yeah.
We all watched the
Oh
moonwalk.
my
I mean,
God. Yeah. We
um,
grew up well, I grew up very naive. I didn't know anything about the world because I had a severe case of this ADHD and I just didn't get it. I didn't understand anything. And I loved this whole space program. Everybody was a hero and it was
yeah,
terrific. And I thought the world was great most of the time until I grew up and found out it's not as great as I thought. But that's another story. But
my experience was kind of almost the opposite.
okay.
I mean, I grew up in this very privileged New York, mostly Jewish environment, and very, very left wing in politics generally.
Mhm.
The daughter of Martin Luther King's attorney was in my class in elementary school.
Wow.
It was a very civil rightsy
Yeah.
left
Well,
oriented.
that was the time period. Yeah. Yeah.
Pete Seeger's half brother was the principal of my elementary school, and Pete would perform during the time when he was largely blacklisted. He'd perform at school assemblies. So that was the vibe I grew up in. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. That
by
was
fifth
everything.
grade, we were all protesting the Vietnam War.
Right. Yeah, and you had the riots and everything in Detroit and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very turbulent time period. So at some point, I guess in your teenage years, you got into punk rock.
Yeah.
How did you find punk rock? How did you discover you liked it and all that?
Well, my first rock and roll show was I believe it was sixth grade. I got a friend of my parents to take me to see the Jefferson Airplane at the Capitol Theater in Portchester, and it was just like dying and going to heaven. And so I was really into rock and roll.
Okay,
and
right.
then I went through a period of loving the Doors. I'm kind of embarrassed by that now. I don't know. They're so pretentious. There are a few good songs, but kind of through that, I went to the end of the Vietnam War concert in Central Park in 10th grade.
Okay.
In 75. And it was Phil Oak's last show, and there were a lot of kind of the folk music people performing. But also on the bill was Patti Smith.
Right.
And she didn't even have her full band yet. And she did this kind of incantatory poetry, and I maybe 3 or 4 songs, but it was mesmerizing. It was so different from anything I'd ever experienced that I was like, oh my God. And then Horses came out that fall, and I started reading about CBGB and the whole punk scene, and the Horses tour started, and you could get into bars in New York City without ID back then. And I got a friend's sister to take me to the Bottom Line to see Patti Smith.
Wow.
And it was, we had smoked a joint in the car before the show, but even after the show, I could barely move. It was so powerful. Yeah. And 2 months later, I made my first venture to CBGB and saw Talking Heads in television.
Wow.
And then I was there kind of every weekend for the rest of high school.
Do you still listen to punk rock?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Social Distortion is kind of my favorite band right now. My tastes are more varied than they used to be, but I still go back to that a lot. It's really my roots.
Yeah, I listen to hours and hours of Spotify. I listen to everything, all types of music. I think music is important for a person like myself who has depression and anxiety. It really helps to calm me during the day. Mm-hmm. If I have any kind of anxiety and things like that, it's really, really helpful for me. Now, do you consider yourself a person that has mental health issues?
I have diagnoses, up the wazoo, and some of them I believe, some of them I do not. Okay. I've struggled a lot in life.
Right. Well, everybody struggles, yeah. I mean, I have a slew of stuff that I've been struggling since I was 12 years old to just maintain my functionality so I could function in society. So it's been a long, hard struggle. But I try to just get into more of your philosophy on the current state of help for people in mental health. I know for myself that I went to many people that were not very qualified. There are some that are, but I think it's a big, big problem when people go to get help. They have issues as far as doctors being incompetent, being overbearing. What's your position on psychiatrists and counselors?
Well, the first thing I would say is that qualified and competent are two different things. There's a lot of people out there who are qualified,
Right,
and may even be superstars in their given fields, but that does not make them competent.
Okay.
And it does not make them competent with you as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really where I think the rubber meets the road. Is this person not just qualified professionally, but are they competent? And is the relationship with you one that is going to be productive and helpful? Mm-hmm. And those are all kind of questions that I think everybody needs to be asking. And I think, unfortunately, and I've had a tremendous amount of therapy in the course of my life, and an awful lot of it has been bad.
Right.
And very little of it has been really outstanding.
Okay. What would you say needs to be done? How can we make it better?
Well, one of the things that I argue for in my paper is I believe that recording therapy sessions should be a right for all clients, and they can choose to record if they wish to or not. But I think it should be a right, because it is one way of maintaining accountability for therapists, and I think there's not enough of that. In my experience, therapists have really done damage to me, and will not acknowledge, and will not apologize, will not try to repair.
Do you have an example of a psychiatrist that gave you an issue?
I mean, I can give you numbers of them. One therapist in recent years who was working in the psychedelic field asked for money to support an organization that he was running, invited me to join him in his camp at Burning Man, not having kind of appropriate boundaries, grooming, giving ideas that somehow I was going to follow in his footsteps in the psychedelic field. Another therapist who I saw many, many years ago, the first problem I encountered with him is I was talking about some of my sexual interests, and I felt a kind of prurience in the way that he was asking me about it, and I kind of called him out on it, and he denied it. Then a few times I heard him snore during sessions. I called him out on it, and he denied it. The last straw in the whole process was that I was living on the west side of Manhattan on 34th Street, and his office was on Madison in the 95th off of Madison. And I was going to early morning appointments at his office and getting my ass from 34th and 10th to Madison and 95th. And he was coming in from somewhere in Westchester, and he was frequently late. And one morning he didn't show up at all. And I left, and he didn't call me until the end of the day. And I was like, all right, this is the last straw. I'm done with you. And he tried to pressure me into getting an outside consult. And I'm like, no. How much of this am I supposed to take from you? And so I walked away. So, those are just a couple of examples.
Yeah. So what do you think has to happen to make the system better?
I think that there are so many things that we need to re-examine. As I said, the recording of sessions should be a right, in my view. I think, and there are benefits to that for the client or patient as well, because if you really want to work on what you've been doing in the sessions, having that transcript is really valuable.
Yeah.
So I've found it just incredibly beneficial outside of the accountability piece. I think that our ideas about how therapy is conducted with, in most cases, 1 hour a week.
Wow.
I think the intensive model is much better for many people. So a week of therapy, maybe 3 hours a day, once a year or once every couple of years can be beneficial, with maybe occasional check-ins in the interim, but really getting into some deep and prolonged work rather than one-off.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I had
so those are
yeah.
some of the ideas that I
Yeah,
have.
I had some miserable experiences with psychiatrists. When I first, back in '91, I had a real bad attack of anxiety, depression, severe depression. And I called one doctor and I said, help me out. I need something, some kind of medicine, because I can't stand it. I can't go on. And she was like, no, you can take the one Prozac, that's all you can take, and don't call back again. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, what am I supposed to do? So it was a nightmare. I think that most psychiatrists that you go to see are not as motivated to help you as they are to, in the monetary department. I think there's a lot that their motivation is wrong. They should really care about you, and that doesn't seem to happen.
Well, I think that's a problem across the board in healthcare.
Right.
And it's getting worse.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, yeah.
But I also think that there's a massive problem with psychiatric diagnosis.
Okay.
And the idea that psychiatric diagnoses are real things is very, very problematic to me, because the DSM is a combination of a whole lot of things. Many of the ideas are rooted in Freudian thought, which mostly is not scientific and has been discredited. I mean, Freud's ideas about human development are just wrong, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about something like narcissism, it meant something very different to Freud than what it tends to mean in society today and to therapists. There's this layering on to some degree on these Freudian ideas of more scientific and neuroscientific understandings, but it's still this document that's created by committee that isn't dealing with real things. It's dealing with constructs. It's not like cancer, for example,
right,
where you can, generally speaking, you get a lab test or a biopsy and it will tell you whether the cells are cancerous or not, with a pretty high reliability rate. The diagnostic psychiatric diagnoses are provisional, they're inventions. ADD, when I was 4 or 5, I was diagnosed with what was then called minimal brain dysfunction. Generally speaking, that's now thought of as being the precursor diagnosis to ADD. I went and had a neuropsychological evaluation in the 90s when my first marriage was collapsing, and I was on Prozac at that point. And I thought, oh, the Prozac isn't helping. And I've read Driven to Distraction. Maybe I have ADD. So I went in and I did the full neuropsych evaluation. And it comes out that I tested as having significant ADD. The primary test that was used is something called the continuous performance test. And I was told I was 7 standard deviations from the norm on that test.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some years later, I went off the medications I was on, including the stimulants that had been prescribed for the quote unquote ADD, which were making many of the symptoms worse. I had more car accidents when I was on stimulants than I've had in the 30 years since I went off them.
Mm-hmm.
And but I believe the diagnosis. Then I take this continuous performance test after having done some neurofeedback, and I'm in normal ranges for it. Now
Yeah.
I go back and I look at the neuropsych evaluation now, and I see that they mention in passing at the end of it, he may have a nonverbal learning disability.
Right.
Well, actually, I think that's the closest thing to what the way my brain works
Right.
than any of the other quote diagnoses that I was given. But even that, it's like it's not what I want to identify with. It's something that I know affects me. It creates certain challenges for me, but it's not like the gospel.
What problems does that cause for me? For you, I'm sorry. Because for me, I can't follow conversations, and I get instructions. Oh, forget about it. Directions, forget about it unless I use a GPS. What kind of problems does your issue cause?
It's largely around organization of objects in space and thinking about where papers and where to put them, how to sort of manage all of that. Now, I generally know where things are, and so if things get moved on me, it becomes problematic. But I'm not good with filing systems and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I would say also some elements of my body in space, a little bit of awkwardness and clumsiness. But I've compensated for a lot of those things because of my high intelligence. And I think a little bit some difficulty in social group settings, maybe a little more than most people have.
Yeah.
But I don't think overwhelming. Where it manifested a lot was in school, and particularly around math and geometry. And so I was in elementary school, I was kind of the smartest kid in the class until 5th grade, and math started getting harder. And then I did need some remedial help with writing longhand, because my ability to write as quickly as I was thinking was limited. And so I had to get some occupational therapy around that. And really, as a result of that occupational therapy, I became an outstanding writer and have been a writer, and was an English and art history major in college, and have published, have written for theater, done a lot of writing. And again, I mean, ADD wise, I've never had trouble finishing projects or meeting deadlines or those kinds of things.
I mean, it goes in the area of not following directions and not following conversations. Or for me, I'm horrible with people. I'm horrible in groups, especially one-on-one. I'm fine. Once add in a third person, I have problems. I don't know when somebody finishes talking. That's the biggest problem. I don't know when to cut in and all that. And plus I have dyslexia on top of it, so that wipes out all my reading and writing skills. But somehow I compensate, and it's not awful, but it could be. The show kind of wants to preach that you can overcome anything, and I really do believe that. So right now, you're still receiving? You still have a counselor that you see?
I'm working with a few people. I have a coach, and I am continuing to work with the psychedelic therapists that I have been working with since September, less frequently now, and I'm very satisfied with that work.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to get into, psychedelics and ketamine and all that. I spoke to a doctor that he said that he gives ketamine and you don't even have to get high to get benefits from it. That it actually helps the shrinking of your brain. Your brain actually shrinks and this helps expand it, I guess. I'm not too sure. How does it work? How does it make you better?
I'm not really a fan of the psychiatric model that's commonly used with ketamine, and that's either this nasal spray form or intravenous. And in many of those situations, they're treating it as a purely medical kind of intervention, in that the way that they discovered that ketamine had this benefit is that people were coming out of anesthesia and they'd gone into the surgery severely suicidal. And it was, I think first anecdotal, that it became clearer and clearer that in many cases, just administering ketamine removed the suicidality for a while. And that's sort of the beginnings of how ketamine became something that was used in therapy. I think that misses 60 to 80% of, and maybe in my case, maybe even more than that, of what the benefits of ketamine are. I use it at home in an oral form, and I record myself during my experiences. I put on headphones, there's music, and eye shades. So I'm in a complete, cocoon, and then you do have psychedelic effects, visuals, the music you can have synesthesia, the music becomes a lot denser and more meaningful, and you're sort of freed up to explore your psyche. It kind of takes you out of your body, so that you sort of feel like this floating consciousness a lot of the time. And I'm using it to explore my psyche and as a creative tool as well at this point. I'm also working with my primary therapist, who specializes in EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing, and uses ketamine in conjunction with that. And when I use the same dose of ketamine with her when I'm doing that, the sessions run about 3 hours, and I spend 20 minutes dissolving the ketamine, and then I don't put the eye shades on, don't put the music on. And for me, I can be that altered and still be present for the EMDR. I think someone with less experience, might need a lower dose than I take for that to work. But it's a really powerful accelerator to the EMDR, because it lowers your inhibitions and your guardedness enough that you can get to whatever the pain or trauma that you're trying to address more easily, and then you can work with the EMDR. And there is pretty good research on this, from what I understand, about its efficacy. And I found it incredible.
So you're doing real well on an EMDR? Because I just had a person on, he suffered a problem. He went through a tornado at his house,
Uh-huh.
and he was traumatized. When the weather got bad, he was just, he couldn't talk, he couldn't do anything, and he went through the EMDR for 6 weeks, and it was gone. So
Hmm.
it appears to be a very good mechanism for helping PTSD.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things, and I first tried EMDR in the 90s when it was brand new, and they were using it for trauma. And I found that the kinds of childhood traumas that I experienced were not single incident traumas.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that useful then for dealing with the childhood stuff. I think that what I've been using it for now, and with ketamine, it actually can sort of be broader and affect more than just a specific trauma, because the what I've been dealing with really has been more acute trauma and stress and ongoing issues related to the collapse of my marriage and the consequences of that, and among many other things that have been really challenging for me in the last decade.
What year
So it's
was
not
your
single
marriage?
incident trauma.
I'm
But
sorry. What year was your marriage? Your divorce or
well, the
separation?
divorce only was finalized a couple of months ago,
Oh, okay.
and
Sorry to
there's
hear
still
that.
some outstanding things that need untangling around the marriage post divorce.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a 25-year marriage, and we wrote books together. It was very, very intimate and
Do you have
intense.
kids at all?
No kids, no.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm really in a place of having to rebuild my entire life
Yeah.
at 66, and
I've been there. Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah. Oh, very, very, very hard. Um, so you feel you're on the right track to get, a good recovery, a good way to
Oh
get
yeah,
back. Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there are things I am still struggling in a lot of ways. There are things that are really hard, but
Right.
I started this course of treatment uh, in September of last year,
Mm-hmm.
and when I went into it, I had made a list of things that I was hoping for, and pretty much all of them were accomplished, or there was significant improvement in those realms in a period of about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And in some I mean, and around feeling suicidal in particular, I think that the change was much more rapid than that. I mean, it was a week or two, and
Wow.
I went from basically feeling like life wasn't worth living every day most of the
Wow.
time, to barely feeling that at all.
That's great. I mean, that's exactly what this, podcast is about. Preaching to people that there is a way out. As bad as it might seem, there's always a way out, a way back to recovery, to normal, if that's the thing.
Well, why be normal?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm not normal. I mean, I'll admit that right away because, yeah, I have a different type of brain than most people. I'm that neurodivergent brain that I'm all over the place. I go on tangents. I rant. I do all sorts of weird things. But I'm starting to like myself. The thing I'm trying to do is be more authentic, and
Mhm.
I think it's helping me a lot because I finally found a partner that I could live with that lets me be me, and
Mhm.
that's such a big plus because there's a lot of people that want to put you in a box. And
Yeah.
my whole
Yeah.
life, I've been a people pleaser type, do everything for everybody else, and I've come to a point where I'm saying, no, now it's my time.
Uh-huh.
I've done things for my family, for my kids, everybody, and it was never paid back. There was no back. It's good to. for my soul to do it, but no one ever said, "Oh, thanks." Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now I'm just being who I am, and I see my kids, but we're not that close, and it hurts, but that's the way it is, and I have to learn to grieve that and carry on. So that's that's the way it is, and that's the way people have to learn that there is a way out, and I think people like yourself and other people I have on the show are great examples of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think going back to the normal thing,
Yeah,
I'm a very unusual person, and my life experience, I describe myself as a self-experimenter. I first took LSD at 13 in 1973,
Wow.
I think it was, and I didn't take it to get high. I took it because I wanted something bigger than that. Some kind of, I mean, spiritual. I'm comfortable with the overuse of spirituality, but I was seeking some wisdom, some gnosis, something connection,
right,
with something bigger than me.
Yeah,
and that's been a theme throughout my life, and the course of psychedelic work that I've developed for myself with these two wonderful collaborative therapists is mine, and it's worked wonderfully for me. But I like to say that my trip report is not a roadmap. And so what I hope to do with the paper that I've written is provoke conversations and inspire therapists to do better, and offer a general sense of, this is possible, but it's not going to be one size fits all.
Right.
I hope that my experiences and my perspectives inform other people, make them think, and lead people to find their own solutions.
Right.
It's not going to be the same for everyone.
No, it isn't. And we have a long way to go. Right now we have a cookie cutting practice of mental health, and it's just not good enough. A lot of people they get discouraged because they're not getting the help. And, you have your suicides, which are horrible.
Yeah.
And it's just a horrible thing. And it has to change. And that's why I'm doing this, even though I'm not a host. I don't know anything about that. I just talk. I have conversations. That's it. I try to keep it real. I try to, authentic and speak the truth about things. And I think that's one thing that society is really missing these days. Real truth. That they're quick to tribe up, get into a tribe and preach the doctrine of their tribe, but they're not quick to get together and try to resolve issues.
And so, I think from that perspective, one of the things that I feel is really important for therapists is that they not just sort of learn one modality and be wedded to it. I think it's very important to offer a kind of a smorgasbord of approaches, and to educate appropriately the client or patient, or depending on whether it's doctor or therapist, but really play an educational role, so that the client knows what's going on, and not to hide behind the degrees and the professional certifications and the theoretical box that you may have been educated in. I think that kind of broad knowledge is really important, and I've not seen enough of that.
You're preaching to the choir. It angers me to see people treating others for just getting money, and that's it. They don't care, hands off. We just collect the money here. It makes me very angry. People are important.
Yeah.
And other people forget that. They forget how important a person is. So,
Well, I think in many cases they actually do care. They just either don't know their limits, or they're locked into a kind of ideology that makes serving their employer, you the client, secondary,
right.
because they're coming at it from an ideological standpoint.
Right. They don't know. They can't feel what you feel, and that's the problem. That's one of the biggest problems. They don't know what you know, and they're not willing to. In a lot of cases, they're not willing to really listen to you.
Yeah.
They just want to. 6 Prozac. See you next week. It doesn't work that way. I understand that you're not big on medicine for antidepressant. Is that a true statement, or?
I mean, I am taking some medications at this time, primarily because my sleep is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not a fan of SSRIs. I mean, I think I'm not opposed to them. I don't think they're bad. I think they help a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
My own experiences with them have not been positive overall.
It doesn't work for everybody.
I have no interest in taking them at this time. I actually tried briefly when I was the therapist I was seeing prior to this new course, kind of talked me into it, and I lasted a month. It interferes with psychedelics, not ketamine, but other psychedelics, for one thing. And I found that it was not really helping.
Right.
And so I was just like, I'm going to stop. And I did. And, that was a big point of contention with her. And she, although she denied it, she really was encouraging me and almost pressuring me to, and she's not a psychiatrist, but she was almost pressuring me to go on antidepressants.
Yeah.
And even after I tried it and decided against it, she still argued for them.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. If a person doesn't want to take it, then that's it. I mean, you can't force them. And it isn't for everybody. Not everybody needs it. I needed it. I had a chemical problem, an imbalance. It's the only thing that worked for me. And I have a medicine that they don't even distribute for some reason, called Pramipixel. I take that. It turns my morning depression, it shuts it right off. I don't have it anymore. I don't have melancholy. I still have a lot of anxiety, but it's like night and day. It allows me to enjoy my life instead of just sitting around and being mopey and dopey. I'm allowed to enjoy my life with this medicine. So I'm a big fan of medicine, but I'm the first to say it might not work for you. That might not be the path. You might need to,
I mean, I think we have a misconception that depression is a specific thing, and I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I mean, I certainly benefited from Prozac when I went on it in the 90s. And for a while it saved my life.
Right.
But that doesn't mean, as was kind of the conventional wisdom at the time, that I'd have to be on it for the rest of my life.
No, not at all.
And I mean, and by all means, SSRIs help a lot of people, and other medications help a lot of people. And I think the kind of purity idea that we should be for or against any of these things is badly misguided.
Yeah.
And if it works for you, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's night and day. I can't tell you how much it changed and helped me. I mean, I was a big mess. I slept all day. I didn't do anything. I had total apathy. And this one medicine basically upped my dopamine. And now I can do tasks and enjoy them. You know, I could play a simple game and enjoy it. No, I didn't have that before as an adult. So to me, it's a miracle to me. So, you know, but you run across people that they don't want to take medicine. They don't want to try it because they're basically ashamed, I guess. It's the only conclusion I could reach, that if everything else failed, to not try it seems, I don't know, wrong to me. But that's my opinion.
I mean, clearly, if you're living with something that's you know, kind of lifelong and as debilitating as what you're describing, then refusing medication is sort of just doing yourself harm.
Yeah, and I don't know how to you know, say that to people. I don't know how to get them. This needless suffering that everybody goes through is the part that I want to try to help in, because I went through it in a time period where you had nothing. There was nothing. My parents didn't know anything about mental health at all. They figured a roof under your head and you know, enough to eat. That's all we have to do. We don't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
That's all they had to do. They didn't understand what was going on with me. So, and I'm sure lots of our viewers have that, or listeners, have a problem like that they were born into a situation where they couldn't get help. And for years and decades, I went on and on. I became an IT person in a pressure situation, and I just lived on adrenaline. And then on the weekend, I would crash. That was my life for 40 years. It wasn't until recently that I got that one medicine and I turned it around, and now I can have happy times. I'm not saying I'm happy. I'm just saying now I can have happy times. You know, so it's just, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me that people won't try it. That's the way it is right now in 2026. I think it'll change, but we'll see. Okay, so usually at the end of the conversation, I leave some time for my guests to talk about something they want to talk about, or they don't have to talk at all. But, you know, the final word, if I didn't cover something or I covered something badly, I want to make sure we get it in.
Okay. Well, the only thing that I want to add to that is that I've written this paper that chronicles my experience. It includes a lot of my creative writing. It's really intended to spark dialogue and thinking, and I'd love for people to read it. They can go to my website, markamichaels.com, and it's featured. The title of the paper is Binaries, Multitudes, and Beyond. And if they click on the link, they can get to the preprint server where it's housed and download the whole article.
Briefly, could you summarize it, what it's about and everything?
It was written in part with AI, artificial intelligence collaboration.
Yeah.
And it chronicles this treatment course that I went through, and it proposes some of these new approaches to therapy that I've been talking about, and encourages therapists to do better, to share power with their clients, to think differently.
Okay, that sounds terrific. I mean, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know your time is valuable, and you really, you know, if we help one person, I think that's important. So I thank you, and just have a great day. And
thank you very much for having me on.
Again.
And I look forward to hearing the podcast.
All right, take care. Bye bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.